The movie begins by showing a house at night. Two teenage girls sit in a room and watch television. One of them starts talking about a certain videotape. She says that if you watch it, then you will die in 7 days. The other girl, upon hearing this, starts getting scared. She tells her friend that she watched it 1 week ago with her boyfriend. And then she adds that the phone rang for her. Afterward, she starts choking. But we quickly see that she is faking it. After they speak for a little while longer, the phone rings in the house. They take a long time to get to it and pick it up. Once one of them does, she gives it to the girl that watched the tape, saying that it's for her. But the person on the phone is her mom. After she puts down the phone, the TV turns on in the living room. Static plays and the girl gets scared. She comes to the TV and turns it off. When she starts walking away, it turns back on. This causes her to unplug it. And once she's done that, she sees some shadow move very quickly from the TV and into the house. The girl goes into the kitchen and notices that the refrigerator door is open. She closes it and goes to call her friend from downstairs. Then she climbs to the second floor and observes water coming from a room. Being scared, she slowly gets to the door and opens it. There is a turned-on television there. And as soon as she sees the image on it, she screams and the image claims her. The scene changes completely, and we see a small boy sitting in a classroom and drawing. He is the only one there. Then a lady enters the classroom. It is the boy's mother. He then leaves, and the mother speaks to the teacher about her son. The teacher shows her some of the pictures that he drew. She then says that they bother her, but the mother, Rachel, tells her that is how her son is currently expressing himself and that he will be okay. Then Rachel and her son, Aiden, arrive home. When Aiden is being put to bed, he tells his mom that the girl who died, Katie, told him how much time she had left to live. He then says goodnight to his mother and calls her by her name. On the next day, we see them both go to Katie's funeral. Rachel speaks to Katie's mother in the kitchen. The mother says that she spent a lot of time researching as to what happened to her daughter. She even asked a few doctors, but the cause of her daughter's death was not revealed to her. She then asks Rachel if she could find out what happened to Katie. And she also says that she saw Katie's face when they found her dead. Rachel goes outside into the backyard. She starts speaking to two girls about Katie. While she speaks and tries to get some information, a young guy interjects and says that it was caused by the videotape. He then further says that Katie's boyfriend also died, but he died by taking his own life. We then see Aiden going into Katie's room. He stands close to the television and looks into it. Once he does, he senses something in it. Rachel then comes in, and soon after Aiden leaves, Rachel looks at some of Katie's belongings and sees how Katie crossed over the faces of every female model in magazine photo. The following scene has Rachel walking outside and looking at some of Katie's pictures. She then finds one where the faces of Katie and her friends are all heavily distorted. Later, while looking through a newspaper, she finds that Katie's boyfriend died at 10 p.m. Then she sees that someone else died at the same time. And then from her job site, we see she discovers that Katie died at that time as well. We then see Rachel driving out somewhere. She arrives at a cabin and speaks to the receptionist there. She asks him about Katie staying there with her friends. He tells her about them and how they did not pay. Rachel then decides to stay there. She rents the same cabin that Katie stayed at. Then she finds the videotape that Katie watched on a shelf there. She stealthily takes it with her. When she arrives at the rented cabin, she starts watching the tape. Surreal images appear on screen. There hardly seems to be a connection between them. Other than that, most of them are grotesque. And the main image that Rachel sees several times is a well. And then the tape ends on that main image. Afterward, the phone rings. She answers it and hears an eerie voice telling her that she has 7 days. Rachel then runs out of the cabin and frantically looks around. The next scene has Rachel in her apartment. Day 1 is shown to have started. Aiden walks to school in the rain while his mother stays at home. She sits there with some man on the couch and shows him the distorted picture of Katie and her friends. He then takes a picture of Rachel, and we see that all the pictures of her are distorted as well. The man, Noah, then asks to see the videotape that Rachel told him about. She hesitates to show him, but then she lets him watch it. While he watches it, Rachel stands on her balcony and looks through the windows of people's apartments from a good distance. She sees several of them watching television. Shortly after, Noah comes out and tells her that he finished the tape. And then the phone rings from inside the apartment. He asks her if she is going to get it. They go back in, but Rachel does not answer it. She then asks him if the tape was scary, and he says that it wasn't. She responds by saying that 4 people have died after seeing it. But Noah says that they are not dead. It takes 1 week to die after watching it is her response. When he is at the door, Rachel asks him who made the tape. And he says that he will need a copy to see what he could discover. When he leaves, Rachel walks over to the phone and looks at it. She sees that there is one message there. Scared to listen to it, we see her pressing the delete button. In the next scene, Rachel is at work. She watches the tape again alone in a room. When she looks at some device that is supposed to offer her some diagnostics as she watches it, she notices that the numbers on it get distorted. She taps on it a few times, but the distorted numbers remain all the same. Then she continues to watch the tape in the section where a fly is sitting on the screen. She touches the fly, which looks like it could be real, but then sees that it is just a product of the videotape. We see that day 2 has approached. Rachel sits with Noah as they analyze the tape. He asks her if it is a copy. She tells him that it is. He then responds by stating that the numbers are screwed up, and he goes on to tell her that some other technical features are not there that are supposed to be. He likens the condition of the tape to a person that was born without fingerprints. This prompts Rachel to ask him how it was recorded. He tells her that he doesn't know, but will find out. They continue watching it, and Noah tells her that there should be a camera visible in the mirror, because the image of the mirror is being shown at a straight center. But a camera is not seen. Then when Noah's coworker comes in, Rachel decides to take the tape and leave. Noah comes out with her and asks her why she is leaving, to which Rachel responds that she does not want another person watching it. He tells her, however, that she let him see it. She then leaves his work building. As she walks just outside the building, Rachel sees a ladder standing against the wall. She gets a flashback of a similar ladder in a similar position from the videotape. We then see that day 3 has arrived. The inside of a mental hospital is shown. A girl walks there, whom a nurse addresses as Becca. This is the same girl that was at home with Katie when she died. Rachel speaks with Becca in a private room. She asks her about Katie, but Becca is catatonic and does not answer. Then Rachel asks her about the tape and about how Katie died, and Becca actually answers and says that she will show her. Rachel becomes slightly confused and asks who she is, but all that Becca does is touch Rachel's hand and tell her that she has 4 days. Later, Rachel is at some place that allows her to print pictures of videos that get watched. She tries printing a picture of the image of the lighthouse from the deadly tape, but when she presses the print button, there is some slight malfunction. She then watches the fly section again, and the fly looks very real to her. She reaches out to it and puts her fingers on it, and much to her surprise, she ends up pinching it and taking it off the screen. What was before a fly from behind the screen has now become a fly on the screen. As she does this, she starts bleeding from her nose. She then takes the picture of the lighthouse that ended up printing and leaves the building. Day 4 is now in effect. Rachel is at a library. She looks through a book on lighthouses and finds a picture of the lighthouse that matches the one she printed. The book tells her that it is on Moscow Island. She searches the island on the internet and finds a group of females standing near it. One of them is the lady in the tape, the one that is combing her hair. Her name is written underneath the picture, and Rachel searches for that as well. Her name is Anna Morgan. Rachel finds some information about her, and eventually she finds something that shocks her, which we are not yet shown. That leads her to find some information about drowning horses that were also on the tape. Eventually, Rachel uncovers that Anna Morgan suffered from hallucinations and that she committed suicide. The next scene has Noah at a store. As he stands near the register, he looks at the TV above and sees himself there with a distorted face. He does not know what to make of it and leaves confused. Then the scene changes to Rachel coming home. She sees the nanny sleeping, as she sits in front of a TV consumed by static. Rachel wakes her up and they speak about Aiden for a small time before the nanny leaves. Later, Rachel calls a friend of hers and asks if she could babysit Aiden because she plans to be gone for 2 days. As she speaks on the phone, she drinks some water that causes her to choke. She chokes for a long time until she notices that something is inside her mouth. She starts taking it out, but it does not end quickly. She has to keep pulling and pulling it out, choking in the process. Eventually, Rachel pulls out a long string from her mouth with a pendant attached to it. She then returns to the phone and sees a droplet coming out from one of the small holes. Then she starts looking for her son. She enters a room, but sees what looks like a girl sitting on a chair. The front of her face is covered with her hair. Rachel comes close to her, and the girl touches her arm. Rachel then wakes up in a panic. She looks at her arm and notices that there is a hand mark there. She tries searching for Aiden again, and when she finds him, he is watching the deadly videotape. Rachel is devastated by the happening and asks him why he watched it. The phone then rings. She picks it up and quickly puts it down. It rings again 1 second later. She picks it up and screams into it that she be left alone. But the response she gets is a response from Noah. He tells her that he believes her now. She then tells him that he watched the tape. And when Noah asks who, Rachel says their son. Day 6 has come. Rachel stands in Katie's room and looks at her drawings. She then rides with Noah somewhere. While they both ride, Rachel talks about Anna Morgan. She says how she was a rather happy person, but then something went downhill with her. When they arrive, Rachel gets out of the car and stands in the rain. Then Noah comes out and gives her a rolled paper with the word mom on it. Standing on a ship, Rachel looks through some papers she acquired on Anna Morgan and discovers that she had a daughter. She then goes to an area there where a horse is kept in a small holding. Rachel tries to touch it, but the horse begins to act wild. It breaks the rope that held it in place and then breaks free from its holding. It then runs through that area of the ship, and some personnel there try to stop it. But it cannot be done, and the horse runs and jumps off the ship and splashes into the water. Rachel then runs to another side of the ship to see what happened to it. Blood is seen by several there in that section of the water. In the following scene, Noah goes into a mental hospital. He asks the personnel there for records of Anna Morgan. They deny him that access, so he finds the record room and breaks in. When he gets to a door there, he sees a fly on it. He finds its presence there to be strange. Then he enters that room. He looks around and calls Anna's name to see if Anna is there. We then see Rachel arrive at the Morgan house. She finds Anna's husband and starts speaking with him. He invites her into his house and asks if she's there about the horses. She momentarily lies to him and says that she is. She then asks him if the horses went crazy and he says that they did. As Rachel walks a little further into the house, she notices the mirror from the videotape. She then starts speaking about Anna and how hard it must have been for him to lose her. At that point, Anna's husband comes to believe that Rachel entered his house for some other reason. She shows him the tape in her hands and asks if he knows anything about it. He answers that he doesn't. And then she asks him about his daughter. He tells her that he doesn't have one. And then he badmouths reporters in general before getting her to leave his house. When she stands outside the house, she takes out the paper her son gave her. She opens it and it is a picture of that very house. Rachel then looks at it and tries to find something in it. We see Noah again as he searches for Anna's record. When he finds it, he sees that she kept having miscarriages. And upon finding that information, his nose starts bleeding just like Rachel's before him. After that, he finds a statement that he should see a particular video record. That seems to be enough for him to stop searching there, and he goes for it. Rachel phones her son and asks about the picture he drew for her. Aiden tells her that a girl told him to draw it. He then says that the girl lives in a dark place. Afterward, Rachel goes to see a doctor that the Morgans knew. She asks the doctor about them, and the doctor responds by asking what her inquiries are about. Rachel says that it is about her son. She then adds that it could also be about Anna's daughter. The doctor tells her that Anna wanted a child, and since she could not get one, she adopted one, but nobody knew from where. She then tells her that Anna saw horrible things, that the adopted girl likely caused these problems. That is when the doctor sent them to a psychiatric center. And then she says that since the girl has been gone, everything on the island there has been better. The next scene shows Noah walking with some personnel to get the video recording he is after. He lies that he is Richard Morgan, Anna's husband. When they get to the box that holds the videotape, they both find that it isn't there, and that the last person who is stated to have watched it is Richard Morgan. And the personnel lets Noah know that it was him who watched it last. At night, Rachel goes to Richard Morgan's house. She knocks on the door, but no one answers. So she goes inside and looks around. She then approaches that mirror again from the tape and looks at it. Then she sees a box on the floor full of things that could be of interest. She looks through a certificate, and then a big centipede appears there. Rachel gets startled and drops it. And then she notices a tape in a VCR. She starts watching it and sees the daughter Samara on it. She is in a room being interviewed by a doctor. He asks her about the pictures she created, but she tells him that she doesn't make them, she only sees them. And after that they just become. Shortly later, Samara asks to see her mother. The doctor replies that she cannot do that yet because she will hurt her. Then she moves on to speak about her father. She says how he does not love her, and that he loves his horses more. While Rachel watches this section of the tape, we see that Richard is standing behind her. He comes to her and hits her with force, knocking her down. Then he starts going upstairs. Rachel follows him and demands that he tell her what he did to Samara. She then asks if he eliminated her, but Richard's replies are only that of the dark world that Samara has brought to everyone. He tells her that she will not stop, and that Rachel's being there is proof of that. He then places electrical units onto himself and gets into a bathtub full of water. He gets electrified to death when he steps in and turns the units on. Rachel gets moved to shock, and then we see Noah come to her and try to calm her down. When he does, Rachel remembers her son telling her that the girl does not like the barn, and so they both go there. They open the door and see the ladder that's most likely from the tape. They both climb it and discover a room for a child there. It was Samara's room. Rachel says that Richard kept her there. While they look around more, Noah sees something odd in the wall. He peels off some wallpaper, and a mark is revealed to them. They then both peel the paper off the entire wall. A huge image of a tree covers that wall. Upon looking at it, Rachel states that she has been there. Shelter Island is where it's located. The final day has come for Rachel. On that day, they drive to Shelter Island. They come to the cabin that Rachel stayed at when she watched the videotape. While they are there, not knowing what to do, Rachel tells Noah that it is left for him to figure the rest out. It is too late for her. Hearing that, Noah gets frustrated and tells her that there is a reason they are there. He wrecks some items in the room, and in doing so, some small balls come together on the floor. They both see that the balls are coming together to point to something, the rug. They pull the rug away and see a mark on the floor. Noah gets an axe and starts smashing the floor with it. When he finishes, they move the broken floor out of the way and discover a well there. The lid gets opened and they look down, but they cannot see too far into it. While they continue to look, we see the TV in the room begin to flicker. Water comes out of it, and the screws to the wooden floor start to get undone. They throw something in the well, but a sound is not heard from it. Shortly after, a swarm of insects, probably flies, come out of the well and startles both Rachel and Noah. As this happens, the floor in the room gets undone and the television slides down and hits Rachel, pushing her into the well. Soon after, she wakes up in the water of the well. She yells up to Noah, and him to her. He tells her that he will try and get her out. While she is down there, she looks around and finds a nail on the wall. She remembers the image of the nail from the ghastly tape, which this probably is, and drops it. Then the lid atop the well starts closing by itself. Rachel finds hair in the water, and then a hand grabs her, giving her access to watch an event from Samara's past. Samara stands near the well in a field. Her mother Anna comes to her from behind and tells her that all will be okay. Then she puts a bag over Samara's head and throws her into the well. She says that Samara is all she ever wanted, and she cries after having done what she did. The scene then changes back to Rachel. She experienced that event take place. She says to herself that Samara was still alive when she fell in, Then she finds her lying there in the water. She lies there looking normal, like she hasn't aged a day. Rachel takes the girl in her arms and tries to comfort her even though she is dead. Shortly after, the girl starts decaying and eventually decays into a black skeleton. Meanwhile, Noah is there yelling to Rachel that it's past sunset. Rachel lets go of the girl. In the following scene, we see that police have arrived in the area and that Rachel is out of the well. Noah sits by her side and tells her that it is over. Then he asks her how long could someone survive in a well like that, and she tells him that it's 7 days. They then come back home with Aiden, and his mother puts him to bed. Noah tells Rachel to call him. After some time, Aiden wakes up with Rachel by his side. He asks her what happened to Samara. His mother answers that she set her free. We see how Aiden becomes uneasy. He asks her why she did it and adds that she wasn't supposed to. Rachel then looks at his arm and notices he has that same mark that she received from Samara. And then blood starts coming from his nose. The next scene has Noah at his work. While he is working on something, the television there turns on by itself. It shows static. Surprised by the sight, he gets up and starts walking to it. He turns it off, but then it quickly turns back on. He sees the black and white image of the well. Rachel tries calling him, but he is too captivated by the television to pick up. A girl then starts coming out of the well. She comes out of it and starts walking toward the screen. Meanwhile, we see Rachel driving on the road, quickly trying to get to Noah. The girl, Samara, then approaches the screen and comes out of the television. As soon as this happens, Noah jumps back in panic and falls. He starts backing away while she walks to him, too scared to stand up and run. And then she stops walking, stares at him, and claims him. When Rachel enters the room, she makes the phone stop ringing. She sees Noah sitting in a chair, with his back towards her. She comes to it, turns it around, and yells wildly. Rachel then leaves his workplace and comes home. As soon as she does, she yells at Aiden for him to go to his room. She then takes the ghastly videotape and breaks it with anger and confusion. Then she throws it in the fireplace and starts burning it. While that happens, Rachel cries and says what did she do that he did not. Then she looks back and sees the copy of the tape underneath the couch. We see how she remembers many events involving Samara and her wishes. She just wanted to be heard. Rachel spread her events like a sickness, and then she says that she made a copy. The final scene has Rachel and Aiden watching the copy of the tape, and they watch it while Rachel makes another copy of it. She tells her son that he will be okay, but he asks what will happen to someone they show it to. To this question, Rachel is silent as she looks at the black and white image of the well.